Gospel according to Matthew in the 5th chapter. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he began to speak, and he taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and who thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." The Gospel of the Lord. I'm reminded that it was 3 years ago today that I came as a supply preacher here. It was All Saints' Day. And I was thinking, what do I remember about that day? And I think I was talking about saints that we found in the front of the hymnal. You remember looking them up with me, some day names and so on? And my favorite one was Monica. Do you remember Monica? She was the mother of Augustine, the great theologian of the 4th century. And you might remember she was also known as the patron saint of nagging mothers. Yes, because she was determined that Augustine would turn away from his ways and become a Christian, which of course he did, and she died happily and became a saint within the church. So, this whole idea of sainthood is sometimes out there somewhere. And what I did yesterday is I looked again in our red hymnal, but what I was looking for was not the well-known saints. I wanted some obscure people, and I found, for example, the name of Page Munk. I dare anyone to raise their hand and say they know who Page Munk is. I didn't either, so I went on Google, a wonderful place where you can find anything, and I discovered who he was. He was a Danish playwright. And I thought, why would he be in a commemoration in our new red hymnal? And I discovered that in Denmark, he wrote many plays, and in the beginning, he was writing during the Great Depression that was not only in the United States, but also in Denmark. And he had rather a foul mood toward capitalism, which he saw as falling apart. And he toyed with communism. He toyed with all kinds of systems of government. He even wrote plays about it. But then, in 1940, the Nazis invaded Denmark, and it set him to thinking about whole new things about society and what you were called to do. And so, from that point on, he wrote very interesting plays, very anti-Nazi type of plays. One that was supposed to rouse his Danish sisters and brothers into understanding what you have in your midst is evil. And he would say, it isn't so much always what you believe, it's ultimately what you're going to do with your religion. And he became an assiduous reader of Scripture. Well, of course, it wasn't long before the Gestapo found out. And so it was on one morning at 5 in the morning, the door was broken in, and the Gestapo went by his wife and children, and they took him out, walked him a quarter mile down the road, and shot him in the head. And when they found him, they also found his Bible a few feet away from him. Probably the one thing that he held on to, and his body released it in the shock of being killed. Unknown, unimportant, this man, now I know why he's in that book. And I think I would like to invite you sometime, take one home, got a computer, get on Google or whatever you've got, take the most unknown name that you can find and see what it might be like. I found the name of a woman who started the deaconess program in the Lutheran Church. It was this person who had great amount of pity toward people who were poor and so on. And then there was this Lutheran pastor. I'm not going to even tell you his name. I hope you will go wandering around and look. At 22 years of age, he had his first parish in Germany, and he was so impressed by the people of his church. It was almost like things were working in reverse, you know? The church has problems, and they call a pastor and say, oh, he's going to solve it all. Yes, sir. No, he's not. It was just the reverse here. He looked at this parish and thought, look at what they do. Look at their outreach. Look at how they do things. And so he got very excited, and he looked at the Moravian church and saw, look, they have the deaconesses. And so he started a deaconess program, and he built a hospital. And in 1850, guess who showed up there to learn the depths of nursing? Ta-da! Florence Nightingale. She was trained in his hospital. And by the time of his death, there were 16,000 deaconesses across the United States, opening up in Pittsburgh, Paris, Rome, New York, Atlanta. One man doing one thing, and doing it so well. So, those are the big shots of the sainthood. And then they are big. I mean, I didn't know who these people were. I had to look them up. And there are others, of course, who are even more well-known. But what I said this morning, I really believe that somehow who saints are really right beside us at any given time. I think one of the things, as I recall looking back, having been here for, well, it'll be 3 years at the end of December. And when I first came here, you didn't know me and I didn't know you. But as time went by, as we got to know each other better, not only did we know each other's strengths, we also knew each other's faults. And I don't need to have you query Leslie after the service to find out what they are. They should be plain to you by now. I've been around for 3 years. But I have to tell you, yours are also plain to me. And yet, what else do we have? We have each other, and we work through those things. There is that possibility, you see, that if it can be done with us here at St. Luke, if you and I and all of you together can be kind of one in what we approach things and how we do, what that spirit is, then the Beatitudes start making sense. Look at the Beatitudes, and it doesn't say to his disciples who are gathered, you must be blessed, and the blessed are poor in spirit. This is not a prescription. It is a proposition of what it is to be poor in spirit, what it is to be meek, what it is to be merciful. And I think one of the things that we have to understand and clearly understand, that when we see these things happen, it's not by sheer dint of our own strength that we have somehow decided, well, by God, I'm going to be a saint. It's one of those things that works carefully in the grace of God, and it kind of ushers us along. And it offers us to each other to see those things that are done and done well. It's when the second year when I was here and I said to a bunch of people, you know, we need to assemble our committees back together. They had kind of disbanded. And within 4 months, not only were they together, they were off and running. Don't tell me, you see, that there aren't saints in this church. Don't tell me that the Spirit doesn't work in this church. We're looking out now for our little Paul out in Africa. And this past week, at the Wednesday morning Bible class, we all chipped in. Our turn. Time to support Paul. Are we supporting just a black kid out in Africa, or are we supporting God's possibility of grace in this kid? To remember that somehow over there in the States, they cared for him. And possibility that feeling of who he is in the eyes of us here makes him the next potential saint. Who knows? Today, after the service, what I'm going to do is ask you to sit from here to here, listen to a splendid postlude Pamela will play. And afterwards, as you probably have seen if you've opened your bulletin, there are pledge cards. And we're going to ask you to take them and make a pledge for next year. It's what all churches do so we can make a budget, so we can pay for the lights, and turn on the heat, and any other thing that we need to do in this church. But it's just a fragment. But I want you to think, when you sign a pledge card and you put that money on it, you say, okay, I'm willing to do this. That's a spectrum of your own sainthood. It is. You could have spent it somewhere else, but you decided to give it here to what we see going on in this church. And when I come in and I see towels and I see these containers of laundry detergent that are beginning to accumulate out here, you don't know where those things are going, do you? You'll probably never meet those people. They will be the recipients of the Spirit that moves within you. It's that thing that makes people into saints, despite their own brokenness, despite who they see in the mirror and may not be all that happy seeing it. Sainthood isn't just saying to ourselves, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. We look at these texts and say, what would it be like if I became a fragment more merciful? Where do I see mercy out in the world? Where does it shine? And I start looking around and I begin to see it. I saw this morning about this young girl who has 2 weeks to live. She has a brain tumor and she loves basketball. Any of you see that? And the whole team decided that this was going to happen. A whole university opened up its basketball court. 10,000 seats that were sold out in 24 hours. All of these people coming forth saying, the last moment of this young girl's life will be blessed. And we will make it happen. That's called a collision of saints of all kinds. And it doesn't have to be Lutherans. It doesn't have to be Catholics. One of the saints in my life is Ruth Goldstein, my 4th grade teacher, when I was taken out. I got sick one morning, and my mother, who always thought that I was trying to fake it to stay home, said, no, you're not. You're going to work. You're going to school. It's 4th grade. I'm sorry, 3rd grade. And she gave me this horrible, horrible medicine that you used to give to your kids. It was called Paracoric. Awful, foul, smelling, horrible, tasting medicine. There, now you're going to be better. Goodbye, go to school. And then 4 hours later, I was in the hospital with a ruptured appendix. More than happy to wake up and see my mother there, wringing her hands, and of course I tell her, I told you I was sick. I told you. So I'm recouping, and in those days they used to keep you home longer than you should, and I was out of school for 2 weeks, and so I go back. And the first part of the year we're learning multiplication, and now the second part of the year we're taking that to learn long division. And I am scared because everybody is 2 weeks ahead of me. And that saintly Jewish woman had set aside a block every day so that while everyone else was busy, she sat next to me and said, let's see what we can do today with division. And she invented games. She invented everything she could think of in order to bring me up to speed because I was so far behind long division. I never liked it and I still don't. But I was amazed and I didn't know it at the time. It was only years later that I recalled how hard she worked to bring me up to speed because she knew it was important. She is one of the saints of my life. She is one of those people who, in the meekness of her heart, turned it upside down so that one student could be up to class with everybody else. Oh my God, are there not saints in your life? Look back carefully. Take their memory on a day like today that we call All Saints. Throw them in front of your face and say how fortunate I was to have these people. The next question is, are there people after I go who will say, I was so fortunate to know that person? It's God's Spirit working within you. It calls you by name, and it says, come on now, you can do this. What kinds of people do it? They do it every day. It's as simple as picking something off the floor for someone who cannot reach for it. It happens over and over again. There, in the quiet silentness of these little moments and so on, is where sanctity comes and grows. ask for it out of the grace of God. Well, so all of you after the service are going to go scattering around. You've got neighbors, you've got relatives, you've got your own friends, but while you're here, there's a different purpose, isn't it, when we come into the church? It's to hear these type of words that come out of the gospel and say to each other, if not us, who else is he talking to this morning? Come, let us have the courage to do those things and to do them beautifully. They may not be written up in books. No, I don't think my name's going to go into the next edition of some Lutheran book of worship. Probably yours won't be there either. But that's not important. What is important, you see, is for those few moments of time, the imprint of our feet upon the earth will have been imprinted on the hearts of other people, and they too will take heart and say, is it God's grace that calls me to be a saint despite my brokenness? The answer will be yes, and they'll look back upon those people who looked upon them as the objects of God's love and treated them accordingly. Rise up, O saints of God. Rise up, O saints of God.